Hey everybody, Clay Archer, CEO DPC Technology, and I'm going to change it up a bit this week. This week, I'm going to talk about the three reasons I wouldn't choose Kaseya products in 2025. 2024 was a pretty unique year for us. We merged four companies into DPC Technology. And with that, we learned a lot of lessons. But one of the big ones we learned was the vendor that you're using is super important. So I wanted to share with you some of my experience over the last 12 months and why I would avoid Kaseya products in the future. I don't say this lightly. We work with a lot of different vendors, and this isn't just for PSA. This is for all the tools that each one of these MSPs used. We had a lot of experience with different PSAs. We had TigerPaw, we had Halo, we had ConnectWise, we had a bunch of different RMM tools, we had a bunch of different backup tools. And through that process, we had to merge a bunch of stuff into certain Kaseya products, and we had to merge certain stuff out of Kaseya products. And after going through all that, I wanted to share the experience, and I thought to myself, well, let's distill this down into two or three things that I think are the reasons that you should not use Kaseya products. And so here are my top three reasons I would not use Kaseya in 2025. Number one, there are better or at least equivalent products out there right now. When I first joined ConnectWise Evolve, which used to be called HGG 13 years ago, we used to sit around at the bar and complain about software. And a lot of us would say to each other, man, I just wish there were other options out here. Back then, there were only two or three players for each tool, so you kind of stuck with the devil you knew. And for us, ConnectWise Managed was always a good product, so we kind of bolted everything on around that and kind of stuck with it. But over the last decade, things have really changed. There are tons of startup softwares out there that do a really good job for almost everything. And there's really good competition at pretty much every tool. So gone are the days where you had to stick with a single vendor because their integration was better or they were the only persons that made this tool that you needed. Now, pretty much everybody works with everybody else. The integrations are great. There's no real reason to stick with brand X because of product Y. You pretty much have the option to choose anything. As somebody that's been really invested in the ConnectWise stack, I have moved out of it when I found a certain product wasn't great. A perfect example is QuoteWorks. I went from QuoteWorks to Quozel Cell, which was owned by ConnectWise. I didn't like it, and I went back to QuoteWorks. You have that option now. You don't have to buy from the big brand. The other thing is some of these newer upstart companies, the code's newer, it's better, and it's surpassing the offerings that Kaseya has right now. And that brings me to point number two. Once Kaseya purchases a company, a lot of the development has been around the packaging and not the core product. And you have to think about it from their perspective, which is, of course, the shareholders' perspective. They spent a ton of money on this new product, and now what they want to do is develop the packaging around that product to sell it in a more efficient way. So basically, you buy a nice product, you polish it up, you send it to your sales team, you package it with some other stuff, and you go out there and you try and send it to as many of your clients as you can. And that's great. I have no problem with them doing that. But what typically happens during that process is they quit developing the core product. So as soon as the original visionary that built and developed that product leaves or takes a back seat in the development process, the development tends to start to lag. And so basically what you'll see is a product that's very stagnant. And so conversely, the young upstart, like I mentioned before, they're still developing like crazy because it's still fun, it's still their vision, it's still their mission. They're working really hard every day to make that product better and better versus the big behemoth that has to make their numbers every quarter. So it's more about sales and packaging. And this brings me to my last one, which is maybe a personal gripe, but I've been dealing with this for a year and I've dealt with, like I said in the beginning, all of these companies. And I have added stuff and taken it away stuff from almost everyone. And I have to say that most of these companies handle it fairly and gracefully. And I would recommend doing business with 90% of these companies that I've dealt with over the last year. But my number one gripe has been over the last year that Kaseya has a horrible, horrible accounting and account management process. I can't mention how difficult it has been to turn off services for Kaseya products. And I'm not just talking about a Kaseya product, I'm talking about all Kaseya products. And I'm not quite sure that it's not intentionally baked into their system to be difficult at best and negligent at worst in dealing with these accounts. I have several accounts that have accrued tens of thousands of dollars of overages over months and months and months after service was canceled up to 6 months ago. And if you talk to customer service, they say, yes, we're taking care of it, only to have the same thing happening next month. And even more frustrating on top of that, after it happens month after month after month, when you're complaining to customer service, they pivot and try and sell you something else, which is just horrible. Obviously, after being a managed service provider for 30 years, I have a lot of friends in the space. We all talk about this. I'm in the groups on Facebook and Reddit. You can see post after post about these issues. Obviously, there's another 300-pound gorilla in the room, and that's the influence of private equity and what it's doing to these vendors. And it does bring concern to me that when private equity buys these big companies and they put all this stuff together, ultimately the bottom line is, how much they sell and their revenue. And I have no problem with that. We all are in it to make money. But sometimes it looks to me as this private equity groups get bigger and bigger, they start to lose focus on what got them there. I can remember the founder of Dado doing presentations and just how brilliant that guy was. Or IT Glue, or, I've been with Rapid Fire Tools for a zillion years. But times change, and doing business with the private equity company that owns them now is not something I recommend you get into. I thank you for sticking with me this far. I know I rambled a little bit, but if you're having trouble getting out of a contract with Kaseya or they're driving you nuts, and it doesn't just have to be about Kaseya, if you have questions or comments about other vendors getting too big or private equity entering the space, please leave them in the comments down below. Otherwise, please like and subscribe, and we'll see you guys in the next video.